Every time you've been in a virtual meeting, right? You always got other tabs open on your computer. Like, let's be real. Let's be super real, right? So what can we do that's different? You have to practice being animated on camera. And I know there's a lot of people like, yo, that's not me, Yvonne. Fine, just bear with me.
I use my hands when I talk. And I never thought about that.
You look so personable when you do it.
Yeah.
Some of us are introverted, right? Some of us, maybe English isn't our first language. What about me, Yvonne? Well, here's what about you. You need to involve your audience, even if it's just in the chat. I like to do this thing called scavenger hunts, getting people to go and find something online and report back in the chat.
Yeah.
Getting opinions. But then what you have to do is insist on those answers. So most of us will see one answer and then give up. But if you say, let's get everyone, and you wait, 20 people will, 17 of the 20 will write you, will write stuff down.
Let's be honest. When it comes to a thriving career, we're all still figuring it out. Welcome to the Still at Work podcast. On this show, we take questions about navigating the workplace and work them out together. I'm Kim Taylor, head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Coursera, and I'm your host. Let's get to work. I'm going to keep this introduction very short. Here are 3 facts about our guest. 1, he can teach you how to salsa. 2, he's hosted the FIFA Arab Cup in front of 50,000 people, as well as the Invictus Games and Pan Am Games. 3, his Coursera course, Communication Strategies for a Virtual Age, has been taken by almost 200,000 students. And here's a bonus fact. He's not a big fan of bios. Today's guest is Yvonne Juanice Ruiz.
One of the things I always say, Kim, the second she said, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, I said, oh, you're going to get so mad at me because I'm going to call you out for something. The truth is, nobody cares about bios. Like, let's be real. Every time you've been to a conference and someone introduces themselves or someone reads a bio, you're like, what a great time to look at my email, right? It's so true, right? Like, so for example, I could say something like, oh, my name is Yvonne. I'm so happy to be here today. And I am. Thank you so much for having me. I forgot to say that part. But, this is a great platform, and I'm a big fan of Coursera. I have a course on Coursera. I've had it for, it's like 6 years, 7 years, it was fantastic. So the question becomes, what can we do instead, right? So there's a couple of things we can do. One of the fun ways that I've done in the past, when, for example, I've had a live session, invited Coursera students to come and join, is I say, instead of me introducing myself, we're going to get started in 1 minute. I defy everyone here to find some fun facts about me. Look me up. Here's my name. Go.
You can pause now and give this a shot because there is one very fun fact about Yvonne that we didn't mention up top. Or you can keep listening because Yvonne had my producers do the exercise while we were talking. They sent me a single question to ask him. Were you in Rise of the Planet of the Apes?
So yes, I have this whole, I have a cool story about this too, actually. So I have this whole other life on IMDb. You can find it as an actor. And the first speaking role I ever got was in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I had 2 lines in this, and I had to wear a mask, goggles, and a hat. But I was so happy that
Do you remember your lines?
Yeah, it was like, we're prepping the patient for stage 1 trials. That was it. We're prepping the patient. Who said it? What for? Like, that's James Franco line. I'm like, stage 1 trials. And he's like, who approved that? And then the other guy comes in.
As much as I'd love to spend this entire episode talking about Yvonne's double life as a movie star, we have listeners and you all have questions. Today's are about how to present and promote yourself, both virtually and in person.
Here's a counterintuitive point. It's not harder to keep people engaged virtually. It's that virtually, I don't have to be so polite. Every time you've been in a virtual meeting, right, you always got other tabs open on your computer. Like, let's be real. Let's be super real, right? And but in the real world, if we were in the real world, and let's say, Kim, we were in a meeting together, and halfway through the meeting, I'm just like, putting up my phone as if I'm like using my thumb as if I'm scrolling through Instagram. Like, No, that was great, Kim. Thanks. No questions. I appreciate that. You'd be like, that is the rudest. That's so rude. But yo, how many of you listening have put your cell phone on your screen so it sort of looks like you're there, but you're not? Or you log in and you instantly just put your email up in front of whatever screen you're on, right? We've all done it. So, what we need to think about is a fundamental change in the way we are doing presenting in general, but let's focus specifically on virtual. Okay? Here's a couple of strategies that you can use in your virtual communication. Number one, if you are not interesting to look at, I will look at something else. So, for example, you know when we're in our virtual meeting, right? We're on Teams or whatever, and I share my PowerPoint, and I'm that little picture in the corner. Kim, there is not a person here listening who has ever read a PowerPoint deck during a presentation. You've stared at it. Maybe you tried to get a few words, but if I'm talking the whole time, you now have to start ignoring me in order to read. And if I'm just like this, like a static image in the corner, or I'm not even sharing my image, you will just listen to it. And how often have you said this to yourself? I'll just get the deck later and read it on my own. Yeah, yeah. And do you? Like, you're not, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Dude, you're like, oh, I'll just watch it later when I have more time. And you never watch it. So, what can we do that's different? So, the first thing you have to do is you have to practice being animated on camera. And I know there's a lot of people like, yo, that's not me, Yvonne. When I was researching communication, I looked at like YouTube celebrities, Twitch streamers. Aren't they really good at keeping people interested sitting in their bedroom, their living room, talking to a camera alone? And if you watch any really good YouTuber, here's what you'll see. They always have this frame that I'm giving you right now, so you can see their hands moving on one side of their body and on the other side. And that's the first tip.
Before you move forward, I feel like that's a very simple takeaway or action item is just, maybe step back a little bit so people can see your hands while you talk. I don't think that requires a lot of work or thought. And like you said, maybe there are some people who don't use their hands so much. I use my hands when I talk, and I never thought about that.
You look so personable when you do it. And here's the other thing, Kim, if we were out having a coffee, like if we were out with the team having a coffee, we would be moving all the time.
Yeah.
Like we would constantly be moving. The only time we're really still is when we're nervous.
So that's the first tip. Here's the second one. And this one requires no sense of personality, because some of us are introverted, right? Some of us, maybe English isn't our first language. What about me, Yvonne? Well, here's what about you. Second tip, you need to involve your audience, even if it's just in the chat. So for example, periodically getting yes or no's, questions, getting I like to do this thing called scavenger hunts.
I can confirm this. Yvonne commandeered my producers from the start of this conversation. He asked them to find those fun facts about him. He asked them to find out what percentage of communication is nonverbal, at least 50%, by the way. And later on, he even brought one of them into our conversation.
So if we have 30 people in a Teams meeting, and I say, can everyone go online and find me a link of this, find me a percentage of this, find me the answer to this, and there's 20 people in this room, I have to be like, all right, give 10 seconds for the first answer to come. If one comes, you have to insist on more. Let's get everybody, please. Let's get everybody, because most of us will see one answer and then give up. But if you say, let's get everyone, and you wait, 17 of the 20 will write you. We'll write stuff down. And then you establish that throughout every 5 to 10 minutes, getting them to do something else in the chat. And the reason I'm saying the chat is because that's low stakes. Not everyone wants to turn their camera on, and if you force them, it's not going to necessarily mean more engagement. But if you insist on action in the chat, and the more diversity, so maybe sometimes it's a link, maybe sometimes it's an opinion. Everyone give me a happy face if you understand. And then you go like this. Like, I'm going to literally play it with you. Everyone give me a little, can everyone give me a yes if that is clear? I'm just going to wait for everyone. This part is the hardest part, dude.
Yeah, because that awkward silence. So recently, I had to reach out to someone at work that I don't work with directly. Our teams work together, and I realized that it had been 2 years since we last spoke. I went to send her a message on Slack, and on Slack it shows you when your last message came through, and it was in 2022. And we are currently in 2024, and I was mortified because I had not spoken to Carol in 2 years. And so I think this would never happen if we were working in an office where we'd see each other in the lunchroom, or we could have coffee or have small talk. How do we facilitate these types of connections remotely, and don't let 2 years pass by where we're not speaking to each other in the office setting?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to answer it because Kim, you make a super valid point, right? The micro interactions that we have if we were in person, the walking to the kitchen together, bumping into someone as you're leaving the bathroom, things like that, these little kind of moments. Uh, how do you replicate those virtually? Because those little micro interactions are very important in making that team cohesion, right? Making people feel like they're part of something, you know? And that in turn, when you need something from that person, because you got to ask them, did you get that thing in? Did you get that email? It's not like, hey, person I haven't spoken to in 2 years, what do I do? So, what is there solutions for that? In fact, I actually talk about it in the Coursera course. There's a couple of things we can do.
Hmm.
One is at an organizational level, and that is establishing rules for non professional communication. Talk about how Google spent like years and millions of dollars trying to identify what makes the perfect team. And what they realized was that those teams had formally and informally created rules for how they communicate. It meaning, like, for example, there was one team where everyone had to speak at every meeting. And it couldn't just be yes or no. Everyone had to speak. And they had agreed upon that. The leader of the team did not dictate that. The team had made the rules. And that's one of the keys. The team makes rules for communication. That's the organizational setup.
Establishing your norms.
Yeah, establishing. So, for example, another thing, and this team, like at Google, there was cross-functional teams that were not all in location. They came up with this thing, which I talk about in the course, is they had a separate communication outlet that had nothing to do with work, where no management was involved. And they had a WhatsApp group where they all just chatted.
And was it like no work allowed?
It was that there was like, it was a non-work thing. So when so no one would chat like, hey, did you get that email? That was all email and team stuff. And the WhatsApp group was essentially like, yo, check out my view today.
I think at Coursera we use Slack a lot. And we have different channels for different things, work related things, and some, non-work related things. We share pictures of your pets or, things like that. But it's a good rule, I think, to establish norms within the team and to say we do designate space for small talk and, or as those of us who are a little bit more old school, the water cooler talk. But yeah, I think those things are important. And we have to be intentional about finding those spaces virtually because it's just not top of mind because it's not how we've been operating. An interesting thing that comes to mind, though, someone mentioned to me that the younger generations who are currently moving into the work world and have done so over the past couple of years have only worked in these environments that we have now. Whereas like for me, when I started working, very few people worked, remotely. I grew up, in the office. I learned how to interact.
Kim was born in a cubicle. They rose her up, the first child born at Coursera.
Not even the fun, like, hipster office cubicles, like the gray cubicle walls with no glass, no window. And so what do we do as leaders, as managers? Because it's easy for you and I to talk about establishing norms that help us get to the things that we used to have when we were all together. But what if you don't know what it was like when we were all together? Then what do you do? Where do you start?
We learned to communicate differently. Like, for example, do you think you could go back to like the way we communicated 20 years ago? Like, I couldn't. I couldn't have more phone calls. You know what I mean? I have clients that are like in their 60s and everything is a phone call for no reason whatsoever.
I can't tell how many people are like, just Slack me. Don't call me. Don't even email me. Like, just send me a Slack. Slack and text for me are at the very top of the list. A phone call or a voice message may never get listened to.
Everyone who's listening right now,
please leave a voicemail for Kim.
Don't do that.
But to finish the point off, I think that the awkwardness that people think they're seeing from like the younger generation joining the workforce is the exact same awkwardness that we had when we were 22 and had no ideas how adult talk works and just jumping in. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I remember being like super awkward, not knowing what to say, talk about, or like sometimes inadvertently coming across as like rude because I just didn't realize that you have to be as formal as some people are. I think that's just part of like integrating into the workforce.
Yeah. And you're right. It happens over time. Every generation, every, different evolution of technology in the working world. The kids are okay. The kids are fine.
You just like you and me, we are forced to interact, and that's going to change the way we interact more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Also, to everyone listening who heard him say to send me a voicemail, do not send me a voicemail.
Kim is like, this is the
Fill out
worst
the
interview.
question form.
She's like, I
Send a
can't. Who got this guy on this podcast?
Fill out the question form. Send us a question or a topic that you'd like for us to discuss on the show instead. All right, learners, I want to get 2 more questions from you all answered while we have Yvonne, so we're going to do them rapid fire to close this out. Question number 1. I am the only remote employee, and my bosses are always worried I'm not working despite me logging all my hours with details of exactly what I'm working on. What can I do to better communicate with them or get them off my back?
I have a really good strategy for you because I also have had boomer bosses, and chances are, not to be disrespectful, but they like to over communicate for no reason.
Why do you think that is? They just want to ensure that they're clear?
Yeah, it's just the way that they've like in their formative years, everything was long conversations. Everything was phone calls or in-person meetings. Even back in the day, to have a phone meeting would be like, oh, we should get together in person if it's important, right? And there's a lot of like we said, so much communication is nonverbal and they want that. So one of the things you can do is be proactive in your communication to your boss, to your report, by sending them lots of FYIs. This is going to be like, and I know it's frivolous communication that isn't important. Okay. But doing like, hey, FYI, I just wanted to let you know, just send off a couple of emails, doing this for the afternoon. Establish that. And now I know what you're thinking. Oh God, that's just going to be more work for me. In the short run, yes. In the long run, no. Because we ask for less information over time. The more we build trust with someone over time, the better it is. It might take a couple of days, it might take a couple of weeks, it might take a couple of months. They might be like, thanks so much. You know what? You don't have to send me the report on this. I'm just trusting that you're doing it.
Here's question number 2. I know I do fantastic work, but I'm not so great at presenting it and myself to higher ups and clients. Do I have to get better at this to advance in my career? And what skills would I need to improve?
Yes, you totally need to develop your social skills because it's the one thing that isn't easily replaceable by technology. People can say that AI is replacing social skills, but it really isn't, at least not anytime soon. So yes, you do need it. Here's a couple of quick strategies. Number 1, if you're ever presenting numbers, financial information, periodically have one slide with your really important number, but have no context to it. So let's say just going to use random thing. Let's say usership in Eastern Europe went up by 4%, for example, right? Instead of saying that, I would first have a slide that has 4% on it. And I put it to my audience. Either get a response or make it rhetorical. Does anyone know what this number means? I'll give you a hint. It's growth somewhere. Just do that. Numbers without context, because what you're doing is people love to solve puzzles. It's why we like Sudokus, Wordles, those kind of thing. For a few seconds, all eyes are going to be like, what could that number possibly mean? Then when you reveal it, it has impact. Mm-hmm. Number 2, I tell the conclusion at the beginning in 10 words or less. If I can't get those 10 words, I don't know. My topic is too broad. No one's going to understand. If you start with your conclusion that's 10 words or less, you're essentially putting a funnel onto a waterfall. And it's very easy to drink from because it hyper focuses people.
Yvonne's final piece of advice for how to get good at presenting is to ask more questions, actual or rhetorical. He's illustrated that throughout this interview, but he asked my producer and I to play a game to demonstrate. We had to go back and forth and stay on topic, but we could only ask each other questions. Here's how it went.
Happy fall. What's your favorite activity?
Don't you just love raking leaves?
Are you excited for Halloween?
Do you go trick-or-treating?
What's your favorite candy?
Isn't sugar bad for you? Obviously, it's not easy. Give it a try.
That game requires so much concentration, doesn't it? Because when you ask a question, it is almost a reflex to think about the answer.
Yeah, it is. I'm seriously taking notes because one, this is a good icebreaker. But we're talking about engagement and connection. And I think these are ways to get people talking and understanding each other's personalities. And so this is such good conversation. Like I said, we're going to definitely have you back. There's so much to unpack. What's the one thing that you want your listeners today to walk away if they don't remember anything else from the conversation? What would you say to our listeners about connecting remotely, in the workplace, that you think would be beneficial to them as professionals?
Do less of the talking and get your audience to do more things, whether it's thinking, writing, or speaking. That's the secret. In my presentations, one of the things I say is I'm going to be talking less than half the time. You're going to be working, thinking, or demonstrating more than half the time.
That's it, learners. Usually I give you a recap, but in this case, I'll take Yvonne's advice and leave you with a few questions. How skilled do you think you are at presenting? Did this episode change your opinion? Which of Yvonne's strategies are you going to try first? As always, we're all still at work. So fill out our question form with any follow-ups or even answers to some of our questions from today. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you to Yvonne for one of the liveliest conversations I've ever had. Do you have questions about how to navigate your workplace and everything that goes along with that? We can help. Go to the form in our show description to submit your question. While you're there, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, Still at Work, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also rate and leave our show a review to help others find us. That's it for today's episode. We'll see you soon. Views and opinions expressed during the podcast are those of the individuals expressing them and do not necessarily reflect those of Coursera or Human Group Media.